There we go. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. If you don't know me, I'm Jason. I'm Kelly's husband and joint owner. And often my role in a lot of these things is putting a layperson's spin onto what the clinical team are saying. So as we go along, we'll be doing our comedy act, and if there are things that Kelly said, I might be able to help explain it or prompt her to explain them again. And as you put,
techie.
Yeah, plus I'm the techie as well, so I've got to be here. So Kelly's our head vet and obviously the joint owner, and she'll be able to answer any detailed clinical questions about what we're talking about here tonight. What we are talking about this evening then is fireworks, and we're going to be going over why fireworks is such a difficult time of year, talking about sound sensitivities, and then going on to talk to you about what prevention and treatment you can have, as well as tips for the night itself. And also things for cats and rabbits as well. But also we see a lot of bunnies as well, which is good. So we will focus a little bit on the cats and rabbits right at the very end of it. But a lot of the problems that we see are around dogs. So that'll be the sort of the main focus. So why do we worry? Well, it might sound obvious, but animals' hearing is better than ours. It's 4 or 5 times better than ours, and they can hear a lot further away, but they can also hear a lot higher frequencies, which means that loud sounds that might be tolerable to us actually might be more uncomfortable or unpleasant to them. Research also shows that 62% of dog owners say that their pets show sign of distress, and 54% of cat owners are experiencing the same. But it's not just dogs and cats, it's rabbits, horses, other small furries, wildlife are all at risk at this time. And apparently 79% of horses were found to be fearful. Of course, if a horse gets scared, it's slightly more risky. So with things like damaging themselves, fences, equipment, and their enclosures, or even owners as well. So it's an important time of year. And although we focus on fireworks night, it's not really that one-off. It's certainly now more of a season. Although there's going to be some focal areas, so you've got obviously the 5th of November, which is coming up, but 14th of November is Diwali, and also you've got New Year's Eve. But because of COVID, we believe there's probably going to be less organised events. Clearly, we know that. But the sales of fireworks hasn't changed, and you're probably going to get more people setting fireworks off in their back gardens. So it's potentially going to be a different type of issue this year, but it's an issue that we need to sort of understand a bit more about, and hopefully help our pets throughout the season and beyond. What I want to talk to you firstly about is why fireworks might start as just a fearful reaction, but if untreated, can develop into a real debilitating phobia. But let's just have a quick look at what we mean by these different things. So fear is something we often talk about, and it's technically an unpleasant reaction or emotion that's brought on by the threat of danger or pain, and it's something that's brought on as a result of a direct stimulus. In this case, it's the loud bang, the flashes, or the lights that happen. That's the first stage of what we see, and certainly in puppies or rabbits and cats, they can get that fear. Now with dogs in particular, they can then go on to have an anxiety reaction, and anxiety is not actually when the fear takes place, but this is actually when they start to sense things are changing. So obviously this time of year, the weather changes, there's different smells out there, they're perhaps indoor more than they are normally, which then starts to bring them on a feeling of nervousness or worry or unease that something's about to happen. But if left untreated, that anxiety can actually manifest as an irrational fear or a phobia. And this is where things then start to get a bit more serious. That phobia, sound sensitivity, it can be called. It's also called sonophobia or phonophobia technically. Interestingly, it's something that we get as humans, but often it disappears after being 5 years of age. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. it is the most common fear in dog and most common phobia in dogs. Interestingly, cats and rabbits don't suffer so much from the sound. It's the actual light and the flashes that cause them more of an issue. And cats don't develop a phobia of it, but they still get very fearful of it. So 62% of dogs show some kind of fear. 96% of the cases, the fear of fireworks actually gets worse, and that does then develop into this phonophobia or sonophobia. But why we're particularly worried about it for dogs is that only 4% of them recover without any help. You know, so if we don't support our dogs and our puppies, and they develop this this fear of which goes on to a phobia, you know, it's not going to just resolve by themselves. You can't really just ignore it. I've got a quick video just which will start now, which just shows you some of the signs that you might see your dogs having. Some of them you perhaps are sort of fairly aware of and know, and are fairly common, like hiding and panting and shaking. But some of the ones, you know, as a person, I've not had dogs, I have cats, but some of these things I wouldn't have necessarily recognised. You know, the pacing, you know, growing up, I thought that was probably about them wanting to go outside more. Lip licking, I wouldn't have perhaps recognised. Refusing to eat.
If that's a Labrador, then you've really got some worries going on.
Whining or barking, obviously we know about, but in the years back you've probably seen. But some people also see the dogs yawning a lot more, but also becoming a little bit more clingy, which again, I didn't realise would necessarily be the case, but and freezing or just, you know, stopping still when they hear those loud sounds. So how sensitive are our dogs? If you're not sure and you want to actually get an indication beforehand, the Dogs Trust has actually come up with a little thing. If you follow the bit.ly link, so if you just type into a URL bit.ly/BSV sensitivity, it will take you to the Dogs Trust and this sound sensitivity scale which the veterinary behaviourists have developed. It's 5 short question blocks, and it generates an advice sheet that will give you some support about noise fear, and you can repeat it over a period of time to see how your dog's reactions are changing. You can also bring it into us, or if you're not one of our clients, take it into your vets, and they'll be able to look at it and help you a little bit more with the sound phobia that your dog might be sort of developing. If you can't use that link for any reason, just go onto the Dogs Trust, or even it's on Adaptor, which is one of the products that we recommend for fear, which Kelly will talk about in a minute. So, in fact, I'll pass on to Kelly now, who will just talk a little bit about prevention and treatment.
Great stuff. So that's brilliant that Jace has just given quite a bit of background into what might be going on. But what I wanted to do was spend a bit more time talking about the prevention and treatments that might be available. So we can pretty much break this down into 4 areas. So firstly, trying to do things that might modify the behaviour. We're also going to look and talk a little bit about pheromones, the pharmaceuticals, and also some of the holistic approaches and what we might use there. So the behavioural care is really something we've got to start early on. If we're getting to the point, and we'll come on to this in a little bit more detail about the pharmaceutical products, we really then are sort of trying to shut the stable door after the horse has bolted, and that's kind of something where we sometimes see clients rocking up on the day worrying that their dogs are going to be having a real hard time with it. But the behavioural stuff we can all start doing certainly a lot earlier. It takes time, repetition, patience, and it's so much easier to probably get some of these things in place with puppies where they haven't got established fear to loud noises and things like that. If any, well, when we were allowed to run puppy parties, obviously we've not been able to do that since the dreaded COVID. But what we were always trying to do in the early stages was encourage puppies to come to puppy parties. And the reason for that was because it's trying to always reinforce young animals to come and have positive experiences in places where they may be fearful. So a vet's is a classic place where, you know, you end up, the puppy might have had microchips and vaccines, so to come and have a play at the vet's and have a positive experience is great. And that concept is exactly the same when we're looking at exposure to things that can be scary. So getting the puppies socialized, getting them out there, potentially trying to almost do like a mock-up situation where you might want to arrange to meet a friend where they might have a bigger, louder dog, or they might be wearing a big fluffy coat, or they might have an umbrella, or they might have a bike. All those things that might be scary items and scary sounds, the more we do that in the beginning and then try to positively reinforce those experiences, then that is all the start of the journey of giving your puppy a really positive start and trying to get them to be quite brave as they go through their journey. The other thing is being really conscious as well about how you might behave or react if you're startled or scared, and just remembering that your puppy or your younger dog is going to reflect your body language. So if you are fearful and you're anxious, or you jump at a big noise or something that's scary, then the puppy is going to take a cue from you or the younger dog, as we said. So one of the things that we think is really important, again, in this kind of lead up, and this isn't just exclusively about fireworks, it's about anything that, again, your dog might find quite challenging in its life. So it could even be if you're going to work and they're separated, so separation anxiety, all that kind of thing. Building a den can be a really, really positive thing to do in the early stages. And when we're building a den, the aim is to try to create a nice, safe environment that the dog is going to be in. So we've got a nice little video about building a den, and then we'll just go through, as we're showing you that video, a little bit about some of the key points with that. Okay, so this little film, our lovely receptionist Ellie, who some of you may have met, has made this little video using her dog Dory, and so hopefully you'll enjoy this as much as she did making this. So what we want to do is try to build the den before the 5th of November, and this isn't something that needs to be exclusive to fireworks. This can be if you're predicting a stressful time, might be in the future, so big party, Christmas, going back to work after being furloughed, all that kind of thing. The longer the den is being used for beforehand, the safer the dog will feel, and or even, I mean, you can make these kinds of things for cats as well, so it's not exclusively for dogs, but it does tend to be more popular with dogs. The den should be an area that only the dog uses. So if you've got young children in the house, then it's best perhaps not to encourage them to try to take over and play in the den themselves, as they're probably going to be tempted to do. And it's something you don't need to go out and spend loads of money at a pet shop getting a big crate. You can use areas like behind the sofa or behind a table. You can, you know, sort of look around the house and see which room might be most appropriate. It should be dark, should be quiet. And obviously in an area where you can keep the windows shut, you can pull the curtains. Probably best to try to use something that can act like a hide, so a big blanket going over the top, like shown in the picture. Obviously lots of little toys, bedding. And the other thing that we recommend as well is using some kind of diffuser. So we'll come on to the more specific ones, but the adaptable diffuser certainly would be a good one to use, where you'd plug in behind that zone or that area and start to get some of those pheromones going. So we've just talked about and mentioned Adaptil. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what that is. We're getting into the nitty-gritty now about some of the things that you can actually use. So I don't know whether anyone out there is familiar with what pheromones are, but hopefully this little video will remind you. You've probably seen horses and animals doing this when you've been out and about. The pheromones are basically, they are little chemical substances that regulate behaviour of the animal by olfactory means. So in essence, they're being sniffed up and then concentrated in the area of the animal smell centre, and then that will then create a behaviour. They play a really, really important role in communication, but they also provide the animals with a lot of information about another animal's sexual cycle, so whether they're in season or not, what their social ranking is, so whether they're an entire animal, whether they're a neutered animal. They're used for scent marking, territory bounders, all those kinds of things. But they also help to form really important relationships with animals as well. So they're very important for recognition between animals and their offspring, and also between animals and their owners. So a lot of you out there who've got cats will be really familiar with cats walking up to you when you get home from work and rubbing their cheek on you. The reason they're doing that is they're reminding you that they own you. They're basically putting their smells on you to say that you're my property, come in and feed me. So you're probably all very familiar with what goes on there. The most important thing is that the pheromones, it's an unconditional response that your animal will do to that. So it's not something they can learn. Once those pheromones bind to specific receptors, they will always cause that same response. So one of the ones that we are most familiar with, and certainly probably the most useful one to know about, is the dog appeasing pheromone. So when you have a mama dog and she is lactating, when the puppies are suckling in and they're kneading around her mammary glands, she will release a pheromone. And that chemical signal encourages the puppies to come for milk, and it makes them feel really relaxed whilst they're feeding. And basically what a lot of the big pharmaceutical companies have done is they've tapped into that market, and they have made a synthetic version of that pheromone. And it's thought that once those puppies have smelt that when they're younger, because as I said, they never forget it, if we combine them synthetic pheromones to those receptors, we should create that same response of relaxation, feeling secure, feeling safe, and reducing stress. So the Adaptil isn't just really about using it just for bonfire night. From these little images here, you can see that it can just create calm and a sense of just feeling quite secure if you've got a pet that's going into maybe a kennels, cattery, traveling. Those are just a couple of examples. The Adaptil product, they've got a good range. They've got various sprays which are really good for bedding, or if you're traveling in the back of a car with the pets and you want to spray in the footwell of a car, or in the boot of a car, or the back of the car. We've also got collars, which we know a lot of our clients that have attended our puppy parties and things have sometimes used to help with training, because again, it just gives that sense of feeling quite calm, quite reassured. And then you've got the plugins as well. The plugins will work, but we have to be realistic about what kind of concentrations they're going to get in big spaces. So when we've spoken to the companies, drug companies that make them, they have always suggested you get a much better response if you try to have a more localized focal area. So this goes back to building the den and then having your plug in perhaps behind, you're building it where there's a plug socket, so you can have it behind, so you've kind of got that smaller area for it to become concentrated. So the next group of products that we do have available are what we call the pharmaceutical products. So these are basically the hardcore sedation drugs. We really don't want to have to reach for these because the sedation will make your pet sleepy. So they won't react necessarily or show fear to a loud noise or a flash or a firework, but that doesn't mean to say that the fear isn't there. It just means that they are less enabled to react to it. So it might make us feel better as owners because we seemingly see that our dog or cat is sedated. So we assume that they actually are doing a lot better. But the reality is we're not addressing those underlying concepts of fear and phobias. Where we would look to use these is if we've got a situation perhaps where a new owner has taken on a dog of unknown history. They don't know how the dog is going to react to fireworks. They've not had the opportunity to do some of the behavioural modifications, and they've got a dog that is absolutely really, really trembling, fearful in a really bad way. And then we will get people come up the night before or on the day of the 5th of November and asking for sedation. In those cases, we can certainly on a case-by-case basis look at what's going to be best for that animal, for that patient. There are some limitations to that though as well, because it really does depend on whether we've got a clean bill of health with these patients. So for example, some of the sedatives would not be appropriate for an animal perhaps that has got a heart condition. So it's not to say it would be for everybody, but if we're really in a pickle and we need to use these, then we've definitely got those.
And is it fair to say as well, I think when I first started here, one of the stories we heard was that some of the old school vets that were around just used to prescribe a sedation, but what they didn't realise at the time was, yeah, the animal was nice and peaceful, but actually they could still get fearful, but they just couldn't react. Yeah. So they were actually, effectively, it was like them being trapped. They're sitting there nice and calm on the floor, you think, but actually they're absolutely in fear and they can't do reaction. So that's why, as Kelly said, it's the last thing. It's quite surprising. I didn't realise that you could be causing more problems if you take that than positive.
Because the fear is then going to be there and remembered then for the following year. So that situation is just going to be compounded. The holistic treatments, so again, there's plenty out there, and it can be a little bit of a minefield. And just to say as well, obviously we're using some specific brands that we stock, but these concepts, you might find you go online and you see some other products, and by all means, adapt whatever you feel will work best for your pet. These are the ones that we're mentioning because we know that we have them and we have confidence in them. We have feedback from some of our clients, but there certainly are a lot out there. The holistic ones are looking more, so they are different from Adaptil and the pheromones. They work in a different way, and they don't work on the pheromone receptors like the Adaptil does. So they tend to be more based on homeopathic essential oils. So we know that the Pet Remedy, their big ingredient is the valerian and lavender extract. And so again, it's meant to bring about a sort of sense of calm. The main way that a lot of these work is they use a lot of very natural products like green tea extract, passion flower extract, all of which are meant to have a very positive effect on the neurotransmitters within the brain, or helping with the production of serotonin, which we know reduces stress and has a calming effect. When we're using some of these holistic products, we don't have a quantifiable way of knowing the extent of the effect on the individual. So it is a bit of a try it and see. Some animals we know are really, really receptive to using these homeopathic products. Some animals not so much, but it's a case of you guys being out there and being informed of all the things, all the tools that you can put in your armory to then use that kind of multimodal approach to try and have something that you can reach for that might work, just to maybe take the edge off your animal on that night. And that really does depend as well on what scale of fear they've got. What's nice about the Pet Remedy is they have a range of products varying from sprays and wipes. So for some animals, like even with rabbits, that might not like a spray or an aerosol near them, then using a wipe on them may be more suitable, or some cats might not like sprays and things. So what's nice is there's just lots of different tools for you to be able to use, and they don't need to be exclusive. As I said, they can all be used together. So maybe using an adapter plug-in behind your den, and then using a Pet Remedy spray on the bedding in the den. That might just be that you've got those two things working together, and synergistically they might work together to create just that little bit more of a calmer environment.
And if you want to try the Pet Remedy ones, we've actually got some wipes which we use in practice all of the time. In pre-COVID times, whenever a client came in, if they had a nervous animal, we'd give them the pet wipe, the wipes to try for their pets. If you're passing by and you want to get one to give it a try before you commit to buying a box or a diffuser or anything, just to see if it has a positive effect on your pet, then let us know. And just knock on the door and we'll bring some out to you. We stock the Pet Remedy as well as NutriCalm and a couple of others. For those of you in Swadlincote, Tina down at Stands Pals also has a couple of other alternatives. There's plenty of different things out there.
Just to say as well, Jason mentioned about the NutriCalm. So NutriCalm is an oral tablet, which is based on this holistic approach. So this isn't a pharmaceutical product. And the way that works is it relies on you starting that quite early. So it is normally recommended to start that sort of 2 weeks and building in. But what's nice is if you've got an animal that maybe can't have some of the other drugs, like we talked about sedation, because they've got a heart condition or something like that, then all of these products are really, really nice and safe. They certainly aren't going to do any harm. But it's about trying it and finding out what your individual pet is most receptive to. The last thing sort of under this umbrella of bits and pieces really is the Thunder shirts. So they have proven to be about 80% effective in animals that wear them, and they work by putting acupressure and swaddling on a cat and acupuncture pressure on a dog. And again, they're meant to be very, very good for reducing stress, for calming. They're not something that we stock because there is so many combinations and permutations of sizes and lengths depending on all different breeds and life stages of the dog or the cat. But Amazon or a lot of big pet stores will sell them, and we've had a lot of feedback from clients that really rate them. So again, it's another nice little thing to have access to. And then the last point is about diet. One of the things that we sometimes see, and it might be the only symptom we see to recognise that a pet is under stress, can be the dreaded diarrhea. So it can just be that the only way that your animal can demonstrate to you that they are stressed is it goes right to their stomach, and then you have days of having a jippy tummy and loose stools. Putting something in place that might help that can be really good, but again, it has to be introduced a good sort of 6 weeks beforehand. We know that Hills, and again, there are other brands out there that will do similar. So if your pet is already on a diet that you know really works for them and you're really happy and you don't want to change food, I would look to see if they do something similar in that particular range. But this is just an example. We know Hills do ID stress. And what they've got in it that kind of gives it those factors is they have a calmer, homeopathic calmer in there, which is similar to a product called Zilkine that some of you that perhaps more experienced dog owners may have used. That's a bit more of an older homeopathic calmer. And again, it works on those neurotransmitters and everything we talked about just now. And there's also ginger extract and probiotics and prebiotics in that as well, which is all meant to have a really calming influence on the gut. So if you know you've got a dog that's particularly sensitive with their tummy, then maybe thinking about going down this line of the food can be really beneficial. And that could even be nothing to do with fireworks, but even if they're going into somewhere like a kennels for a couple of weeks, then I'm thinking about something like that can be good.
Just before we go on to kind of some more practical tips for the night, I just noticed there's a few questions in the chat box, which sorry I've missed because we've got two screens, but the chat doesn't come up straight away. So Della, you're interested to find out whether chickens were disturbed by fireworks? Kelly?
So we do see, not exclusively chickens, but we do hear from people that own birds where they ask about, is there anything that would be safe to use? The one thing that we have recommended with birds is the Pet Remedy. So that's in the spray form. So there's a tiny little pump spray, and people have used that in the chickens or the birds environment, and we've had quite good feedback about that. It's much more tricky, I think, to use some of the oral products in some of the birds because just the stress of handling them and perhaps having to syringe something in their mouth isn't ideal. And there isn't anything scientific to suggest that the pheromone side of things, so those Adaptil products, would necessarily work in birds. They're more licensed and sort of pushed towards dogs. But the Pet Remedy spray I would definitely give a try with chickens.
And Ross, you've sounds like Cindy Basser is very sensitive to sound, and you've tried some of a relatively new product called Sileo, which we have in stock and we can get, and it has had some very positive effects. It is effectively a mild sedative, but it's been designed interestingly so it doesn't have any of those negative effects. So that Cindy will still be able to move around. She'll just get that sleepy, that more sense of calm. The only thing is, I hope when you got it, you got the warning to make sure you wear the gloves, because it's a product that can affect humans as well. So we don't want you falling asleep as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Sileo is kind of fits right in the middle between Adaptil and the pharmaceutical sedatives, because I think the pharmaceutical companies recognise that we're moving away from just giving dogs full-on sedation, and they tried to find something that was in that halfway house. But it is still a pharmaceutical product, so it is still a type of sedation, but it is a much lower dose. So it's not going to create some of the problems that we discussed earlier. So I think if you've got a dog that is already showing a lot of fear, obviously hopefully some of the things that you go away with tonight that you can implement for and start doing for next year, but it may just be that if already we're seeing fireworks going off and that fear is going on, then having the Sileo sort of in the house ready to use on a really bad occasion would be ideal.
The Thunder shirts are also pretty good as well at short term. We've had lots of success with those. But I'm going to move on to just a few of the specific hints and tips when you for what to do when fireworks are coming. So because a lot of the stuff we've talked about is prevention and treatment, these are just a few other things that we can do. Ahead of time, please make sure your cats and dogs are microchipped, because often what happens is they have that fight or flight reaction, particularly cats will flee. So make sure that you've got them inside, that doors, windows, cat flaps are all closed and secure. Take dogs out before it gets dark. I know it's harder because it's getting darker earlier, but obviously the one key thing with fireworks is they need to be dark before they're let off. So if you can take your dogs out for a walk before it gets dark, that will help. And obviously things like litter trays for those cats that are normally outdoors. On the actual night, when it starts to get dark, start to distract them, whether that's with TV. You can get cat TV if you didn't know. Search for it on YouTube. And yes, it is a fish tank, I think, one of the channels.
Yeah. I think you can get dog TV as well, but I think cats tend to be more visual. They're more visual, so they see the little shapes and fishes and mice on the screen.
Yeah. So draw the curtains, play music. And also don't leave them alone if you can. Be there with them and act normally. They will, as Kelly said earlier, react to you. So if you're jumping around, it will just reinforce some of the stuff for them. But as you mentioned, Ross, it's getting quite close. Obviously, this is going to go on until January. There's, because we do see it a lot of the time. So even though when it finishes in January, we'd recommend strongly that you carry on with this desensitization training, using some of the things like Adaptil, using things like the Thunder shirts or the homeopathic sprays or the behavioural stuff, because it's it will help you for next year. It will help to improve it year on year. One of the best tools that we've seen is something called Sound Scary. 93% of participants improved when doing the program. The URL is at the bottom of that slide. If you can't see it, let me know, and we can send it to you afterwards. But just go to the Dogs Trust and search for Sound Scary, and you can download it. It's free of charge, and it's really helpful. There's a booklet that goes along with it as well. It basically allows you to download some MP3s that, or WAV files or whatever, just to play to your dog or to your dogs in particular rather than cats, because so they're not quite in the same way. It will help that desensitization going forward. So just having a quick look at cats and rabbits. I think I mentioned before, it's not believed that cats develop a phobia in the same way as dogs do, but they still get fearful reactions, and fear over the fireworks season is still a big issue. And also a lot of the cats, we said about keeping them indoors. If they're outdoor cats, especially in multi-cat households, that adds to the stress, and it just compounds it and makes it more problematic for you as owners. So some of the advice which we've taken from the Cats Protection is keep him or her in after dark, provide a litter tray, food, water bowls, and a place to hide. So similarly to a dog, make sure the doors and windows are closed. Try to reduce the outside noise in particular, but also keep those flashes out of the way. So similarly to dogs as well. But then also use some of the pheromone. Now in cats, it's known as Feliway as opposed to Adaptil. Same product, same manufacturer, and they do similar products. I don't think they do collars.
No,
but
they do the spray
and
they do a diffuser. We actually use a lot of their products in for any of the cats come in to stay with us, any of the patients, and we notice a massive difference if we spray the Feliway onto our hands and then we go to handle a cat maybe to take a blood sample, and it just really helps with them not being so fearful. So we can really vouch for that, certainly when we're using that in-house.
Yeah. And both of our dog and cat kennels, we have the pet remedy in the dog and the Feliway in the cat ward.
Yeah,
to have all of the time.
Yeah.
So Kelly, what about our rabbits and small furries?
Oh, the rabbits and small furries. So these little guys are not immune to the fear either, and it may sound like common sense, but some of these things, they may just get a little bit forgotten if they're outside or at the bottom of the garden. One of the main things to do is to give your bunny or guinea pigs lots of extra bedding, because they love to burrow down and hide and get cozy. You can put in maybe an extra cardboard box full of hay with some little pop holes, some little holes cut in there for easy access and exit, so that they can kind of have a good old dig around and get quite deep in there and feel secure. If you've got rabbits or guinea pigs that are hutched or they're in some kind of outside accommodation, it might be worth seeing if that can be brought inside, just depending on the size of it. But obviously using a quiet room, so maybe an unused garage or a shed is another good alternative. But obviously bringing them in would be ideal. If you can't bring your pets inside, then if you can, and the enclosure is mobile, then maybe turning it around so that the open side of it faces a wall or a fence instead of into an open garden. And this will help to stifle the sound and also prevent them from seeing the flashes of light. Cover their hutch with thick blankets or a duvet to block out some of the sound. of the bangs and the site of the fireworks as well, but obviously make sure that the area is still very well ventilated. If you have a house rabbit or you're able to bring your pet inside, then the same things we discussed earlier, drawing the curtains or blacking out the windows to block out the flashes and the light is a great thing to do. Closing the windows to muffle any sound, and then maybe just switching some background noise on like a TV or radio. But just be conscious, if your little furry is normally outside and they're not used to a radio or a TV, then even that noise might be quite alarming. So obviously not having it on too loud. Rabbits are very sociable animals. They love having a little bonded husband or wife that they're kept with, so really important to make sure that they've got their companion with them, just to reduce the fear and keeping everything routine and familiar. And we know feedback from our regular bunny clients that a lot of people have used the pet remedy with buns, and we've had really, really good feedback. Again, they seem very, very receptive to it. So birds and the small furries seem very receptive to those sort of holistic homeopathic products.
I guess going back to Zella's questions about chickens, or if they've got somewhere they're going overnight, you could potentially cover their what's called a hutch, is it?
Yeah, their accommodation, absolutely. Or if they can be moved into somewhere sheltered with and you know, with perhaps more solid walls, so you've got that sound muffling like a garage. I mean, the main thing is obviously to always be really mindful of ventilation in some of these species, because they've got more vulnerable airways. But yeah, trying to get them in somewhere maybe of benefit.
Yeah. Ross is just commenting on the fact that the sound scary. It says to start it 14 days before. It's like any of the behavioural stuff. You unfortunately you do need to start it kind of early on. But as we said earlier, if you even if you started it now, it will have some benefit, but also carrying on that desensitisation beyond the new year will kind of bring positive benefits to Cindy.
Well, as you said, Jason, earlier as well, it is not really about focusing on the 5th of November, because really now we're into this time of year and it's dark early. Fireworks are pretty much going off all the way up to New Year, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. So we're almost at the end, and then what we'll do is we'll stop the recording then, but we can open it up and then you guys can answer any questions that we haven't already answered. But just in summary, the sound sensitivity, that sonophobia is absolutely the most common behavioural problem in dogs in the UK, but that preparation is key. You know, if you do leave it too late, then things like Adaptil and Feliway are ideal for dogs and cats, but you know, because they're not kind of pharmaceutical, but as we've already mentioned, there are a couple of pharmaceutical things you can try and some homeopathic that are really positive. But the key advice really, you know, start early, don't leave it to the night, build yourself a den, cats, dogs, as well as bunnies we talked about. Act normally on the night, you know, they will react to what you're like, and you know, if in doubt, just give us a call and we'll see if we can help you out.